Or, what was there before creation? Or, if God is good, why is there evil? As I always say to such people, the question may be simple, but the answer may well not be. In fact, if we try to give a simple answer, we may well oversimplify matters and end up just being quizzical. When someone asked Augustine what God was doing before creation, he replied that God was making hell for people who ask silly questions. Simplicity is a great virtue, but oversimplification can actually be a vice, a sign of laziness. This is, of course, a familiar problem. Suppose I am standing outside my college in St. Andrews and a car pulls up. A simple question, says the driver. How do I get to Glasgow from here? Again, the question is simple, the answer less so. If I simply say, keep heading west and a bit south and you can't miss it, I am telling the truth, more or less. The roads are reasonably well signed, but the roads are not straight, and without more help, one might easily go wrong. It might be useful to point out that there is a large river in the way, a mile wide at its narrowest point until a long way inland, and that the bridge over the river is sometimes closed because of high winds, but that the alternative route involves going through several small towns and villages and skirting around one or two ranges of hills. The driver doesn't want to know all that, or not at the moment. But unless I draw attention to some of it, I may be oversimplifying, and the driver may resent my simple advice for being too simple by half when, stuck in a village somewhere, he reflects that a little complexity might actually have helped. I feel a bit like that with the present book. I set out to write a simple book about Jesus, but Jesus was not simple in his own time, and he is not simple now. One might have thought that it would be comparatively easy to take my earlier books, particularly Jesus and the Victory of God, and The Challenge of Jesus, and turn them into something quite simple. But I was surprised, in sketching out this book and then writing it, to discover how many new twists and turns I am not aware of that I did not deal with in those earlier works. It isn't just that scholarship has moved on, though of course it has. This book, though, is not the place to explore those debates. It is just as much that I have spent most of the last decade working as a bishop in the Church of England, and though in some popular imaginings bishops don't have very much to do with Jesus, I found myself thinking, talking, and preaching about Jesus pretty much all the time. In particular, I was of course vitally interested in the way in which Jesus and the struggle to follow him might make a difference in real lives and real communities, from the old mining villages of County Durham, where I lived and worked from 2003 to 2010, right down to the corridors of power in Westminster. For most of that time, I didn't stop to ask how all that ministry and the life of prayer and sacrament that sustained it might be changing my view of Jesus. Now, however, when the car pulls up and someone says, "A simple question, tell me about Jesus," I find myself wanting to explain about the river, the bridge, the high winds, the small towns, and the hills. I could just say, just start reading the Gospels and try to follow Jesus, and that might do the trick, like telling the traveler just to head west and south and hope for the best. But I decided to answer the simple question by putting together, layer upon layer, in as simple a fashion as I could, what I thought might help someone who really wanted to find the way to Jesus as he really was, and so to find the way through Jesus both to God himself and to a life in which following Jesus would make sense. The book then falls more or less into 3 parts. Part 1 consists of the first 5 chapters, in which I try to explain what the key questions are, why they matter, and why we today find them difficult to answer. Then, in the central part of the book, Part 2, chapters 6 to 14, I try, as simply as I can, to say what I think.